Some of the routes we're going to share with you today are going to be kind of top secret areas, so you're going to be let in on some of the best kept secrets of the Sierra. But what is so special about the Central Sierra in this area? It's roughly speaking 200 miles of completely uninterrupted wilderness. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely incredible. What if we just switched our mindset, and how can we access some of the more remote parts of the John Muir Trail, or areas give or take off of it, without having to start at both ends? And how can we kind of get into the meat of it? Just a little bit about myself. This is a quick snapshot of Dinky Creek, which is a small little mountain area outside of Fresno Clovis area where I grew up back in 1982. And then I did a trans-Sierra trip to Mount Whitney, which is a week-long hike across the Sierra to Mount Whitney back in 1994 when I was in middle school or in high school. That was my first ever overnight backpacking trip, which was a week-long hike across the Sierra. I did do the John Muir Trail in 1997, the 200-mile route from Yosemite to Mount Whitney, which I know many of you are very familiar with. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely inspiring. It's a great accomplishment. I'm super proud of it. And if you've done that, or if you're thinking about doing it, awesome. I think it's incredible. We started TSX Challenge back in 2011, and we started as a way to kind of connect people to the outdoors. It was actually based on that very first route I did across the Sierra to Mount Whitney. So we just started with one route, doing one thing really well. Now we have multiple routes kind of throughout the Sierra, throughout the Grand Canyon. And it's really gratifying to be able to share these with you guys and your friends and family today. Some of the routes we're going to share with you today are going to be kind of top secret areas, so you're going to be let in on some of the best kept secrets of the Sierra. I spent a lot of my time on the western side of the Sierra, so I know there is a lot to do on the east, but here we're going to talk about some of the more remote areas of the Central Sierra and how you can access some of that cool sections between kind of the big bookends of Yosemite and Sequoia Kings Canyon. And currently I live with a growing family kind of in the Bay Area. So that's just me in a nutshell. Here are those fish I caught back in 1982. So these guys never stood a chance. But that's me back in the first venture into the Sierra that I can remember, or I have pictures of. This is the type of groups we typically hike with now. We do, week-long trips with all different ages, all different experience levels through the Sierra and the Grand Canyon. So if you're interested in an organized trip, keep us in mind. If you're just looking for ideas for your friends and family, again, kind of use me as an open book. Today, we're going to cover a whole host of topics, kind of talk about what's so special about the Central Sierra. We'll talk about different routes and how you can get on and off the GMT and kind of how you can access them. We'll talk about some of the hidden gems that are beyond the national parks that I mentioned, the Yosemite and Sequoia Kings Canyon. We'll talk about some fresh ideas for some day hikes or road trips. If you're in California, I know we have a lot of people from California, some people from out of state, some people from out of the country. I'll try and tailor this so you have a little bit of everything for all of you. So if you're local, you can find some great places just to get off the beaten track with your friends and family. We'll do a little bit about gear and logistics and just show you a snapshot of some of our favorite places in some of these more remote areas. But what is so special about the Central Sierra in this area? And this is my take. This is a view of the Sierra, roughly speaking. I'm here in the Bay Area at the moment. And then you have Clovis Fresno area where I kind of grew up. And then you have this beautiful range of the Sierra here. Most people don't realize, but in order to cross the Sierra, there are really only two roads. There's a road that goes north, Tioga Pass to Yosemite. There's a road farther south near Lake Isabel, down near Bakersfield, kind of the southern part of the Sierra. But in between, you have this range of the Sierra, and it's roughly speaking 200 miles of completely uninterrupted wilderness. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely incredible. Now, when most people think of that backpack in the Sierra or, getting into exploring it, you think of something like this, kind of hike like Half Dome in Yosemite, which is incredible, beautiful. It's roughly speaking 8 miles up to the summit and then 8 miles back, a big hike. When you get to the summit, you have incredible views into Yosemite Valley, lots of granite, lots of places, that are totally inspirational and great to see. If you were to look over your shoulder, though, on a typical summer day backpacking in Yosemite, it might look like this. This is the trail up to Half Dome before they put in that new permit system, or the trail up to some of the beautiful falls on the way on the Half Dome Trail. So a lot of people on the typical summer day, at the other end of the John Muir Trail, or kind of that high Sierra range, you have Mount Whitney, which is the Mount Whitney group is the highest peak in the lower 48 states. So 14,500 feet. It's an incredible accomplishment. Again, if you hiked up there, some people do it in a day, some people in 2 days. Some people in 3 days, some people the week-long hike across the Sierra. This is, again, kind of the other bookend of the John Muir Trail. Incredible views if you're up there. This is now looking west from Mount Whitney across towards the Great Western Divide and the Kauai Range and the Kern Canyon down below. Again, on a typical summer day, if you were to look over your shoulder, though, it might look a little bit like this. It's a happening place up on the top of Mount Whitney. There is a lot to see kind of at both ends. And if you think about the John Muir Trail, it's 211, give or take, miles, roughly speaking. It was absolutely beautiful scenery. You have a huge variation of the Sierra where you're at 4,000 feet, you're at 14,500 feet, lots of diversity out there, really well-maintained trail systems, and a great sense of community. It's a lot of pride and fun out there. You're going to see people, it's happening as you're kind of moving along the Sierra, but it is heavily trafficked. There's a lot of people out there. It can be crowded at times. The permitting system is pretty challenging to get the dates that you want or even get in to get the permits to go north or south on the John Muir Trail. And the social media, there's a lot of stuff out there. So today we're going to switch it and talk about what if we could get off the beaten path, right? What if we just switched our mindset, and how can we access some of the more remote parts of the John Muir Trail or areas give or take off of it without having to start at both ends? And how can we kind of get into the meat of it? A few takeaways we're going to talk about. So you have Yosemite and again, kind of Kings Canyon Sequoia National Park. Yosemite gets 5 million visitors a year. Sequoia, roughly 1 million plus visitors a year. But I'm not sure if you guys have ever done this where you spin the globe and just kind of put your finger on a spot. What if we just put our finger on one spot kind of right here in the middle? This is Red Mountain. Red Mountain, beautiful high Sierra mountain. It's about 12,000 feet. It gets less than 100 visitors a year. I would say maybe even less than 50 visitors a year some years. It looks like this. And Red Mountain is just a stone throw away from the JMT. You have incredible views of the LeConte Divide and the High Sierra. This is Goddard Canyon from Red Mountain here. And from the top of Red Mountain, you have some of the best outsized views of the Sierra. It looks and feels a little bit like this. Here we are, top of Red Mountain. 12,000 feet. I love getting up there. We usually have the entire mountain to ourselves. It's a great place to be, and it's just a stone throw beyond the John Muir Trail. For those of you who want some reference, here's just one idea. This is the John Muir Trail right here. If you know the JMT, this is looking at something called Evolution Valley. Evolution Valley is almost like in the middle section of the John Muir Trail. In the foreground here, you might see something pretty noticeable though. There's this beautiful big mountain range that's just off of it. This is called the LeConte Divide, and write it down. I will call this like a big kid's playground. It's a great place to go explore, get in and out of, have great experiences. Red Mountain sits on LeConte Divide, 12,000 feet with incredible views of the entire Sierra. But beyond that, there's actually a whole host of places you can start to think about. Red Mountain Basin is in here, Bench Valley, Black Cat Mountain, Mount Goddard sits behind it. In fact, if you get in and out of these areas, you're going to see it's pretty remarkable. There's some trails that can take you in, some trails that can bring you back out. Just a small sampling of what you might expect to see if you're in some of these areas. This is a shot of Red Mountain Basin. Beautiful view, Mount Hutton in the background, a 12,000 foot peak. Here's Bench Valley, Black Cat Basin. All of these are in and out of the LeConte Divide here. And then sitting farther behind it is something called Goddard Canyon. It's a beautiful place. There are roughly 40 million people who live in California. Most of them have no idea this area even exists. And sitting back below, even farther back, is Mount Goddard. You can actually see the top of Mount Goddard from Highway 99 or Highway 5 if you're driving kind of north to south in California in the Central Valley between San Francisco and LA. You can see the top of these peaks here. And the view from Mount Goddard, which we organize trips out there as well, it's like that 360-degree airplane view. You're the only one up there, far away from the crowds, far away from all the traffic and the hustle bustle, and you get experiences like this. So just a small recap, what's so special about the Central Sierra? Not a lot of people. This is rugged and wild and untamed spaces. For some of these routes, you might have to venture off trail to go experience them. They're accessible to motivated people though. If you're, close or around the JMT, if you really just to step off the trail and experience some of these smaller places, you can have some incredible experiences. Few things that are required though. You got to be mentally tough, have a positive attitude, and be ready for a challenge. So I think if you have those many ingredients with you or your friends or family, this could be a great place for you to start exploring. Let's switch gears and talk for a second about how we're going to access the Central Sierra. This is the John Muir Trail, and you have kind of all the major kind of regions laid out here. In the Bay Area, people might think of it from this perspective because there's something pretty important that's missing here, and I'm going to show it to you in a second. So you have two big arteries that access kind of, northern and southern terminuses of the John Muir Trail. If you're from Fresno, Clovis area, which is where I grew up here, right in the Central Valley, you can go north and off Highway 41, you're going to hit Yosemite National Park. You can kind of go to the southeast and you're going to hit Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park. And these are the two main roads that people think about in terms of accessing the Sierra. But tonight I'm going to let you in a secret. If you've never heard of this, there's actually another way to access the central part of the Sierra. It's called Highway 168. It goes directly from Fresno, Clovis area right into the heart of the Sierra. In fact, it will take you just a stone's throw from the JMT. From there, you can access some of the most remote wilderness destinations and all the central sections of the JMT without having to kind of do the hiking 100 miles to get there. On Highway 168, it's roughly a 90-mile road that goes from the Fresno Clovis area of the Central California all the way back to Edison Florence Lake, which is at the far terminus here where this road ends. Right back here, this is Edison Lake. On the way, let's say you just wanted to explore, this part of the Central Sierra. There's great places to hang out with friends and family, even if you're just going to do a day trip or hike off and on the trail. Waterfalls, giant sequoias, hot springs, it might look a little bit like this. In fact, if you're driving up there, these seasonal roads open up by mid-May, maybe a little bit later on those big snow years that we have. You have the San Joaquin River drainage, and when it first opens up on Kaiser Pass Road, there'll be snow stacked, but you're going to have these beautiful views. This is Mount Banner and Ritter out in the background there near Ansel Adams Wilderness. You're going to have these beautiful hidden attractions. So you have Rancheria Falls, which is just roughly speaking 1 to 2 miles straight off the road, a great hike for families. You have the McKinley Grove, which is our own private, giant sequoia grove where we can go and walk among the trees and get close to them and touch them. It's a lot more personal experience than you might find in Sequoia Kings Canyon or Yosemite. You have Mono Hot Springs, which is just, again, right off the road here on the back near Edison Lake. A whole series of small hot springs where you can go and explore and see them in their natural state. Just for orientation wise, and again, if you kind of think about how you're going to access this, it's also really important to know where the lakes are, where the reservoirs are. A lot of these are kind of man-made reservoirs that are dotted along the Sierra. You have Edison and Florence Lake, which are on the north around 7,000 plus feet. You have Huntington and Shaver Lake, which are out here more to the west, which are great access points for some of the more remote, less traveled wilderness that most people don't know about. And then to the south, you have Corright and Wishon. And a lot of the trips that we organize are based out of Corright and Wishon reservoirs. All of these are managed by either PG&E or Southern California Edison. This is some of the hardest working water in Central California, creating a ton of renewable energy that's powered throughout the state. Here are the reservoirs. If you kind of overlay this from a different perspective, you have all this wilderness. So additional to the national parks, you have Yosemite, Sequoia Kings Canyon to the south. You have Ansel Adams Wilderness now you can access. You have Kaiser Wilderness, John Muir Wilderness, Dinky Lakes Wilderness, and Monarch Wilderness. All of these are just federally designated wilderness areas that are a little bit more off the beaten track. Great places to explore. And here's the John Muir Trail, which kind of cuts right along the back of the Sierra. So now you have kind of your access points to starting to see some of the more remote locations. Now, from my perspective, there is a lot of great areas to see. And I'm going to break this down. You can kind of find where you are in your willingness to venture into the wilderness. I would call 3 levels of wilderness. And this is kind of my take. You have wilderness, which is great. You have wilderness, and then you have oh my gosh, wilderness type stuff. So I'll give you a small snapshot of what I mean by this. So the basic wilderness, I would call this beginner friendly wilderness. Maybe you're going to plan your own backpacking trip for a couple of days or just a night. You can create some great 4 to 20 mile loops out of here. There's good trails, great fishing, few people, pretty good access to service, which means if you're out there backpacking for a night or two and you wanted to bail quickly, you can get back to your car, get back and, find some access. And that would be Kaiser and Dinky Lakes Wilderness, which are 2 areas to go explore. Kaiser Wilderness looks like this. We're going to access it out of Huntington Lake. Elevation range is from 7,000 to 10,000 feet. If you were to go find one of the lakes out there, it might look like this. This is George Lake and Kaiser Wilderness. And you can start putting multi-night trips together or just a couple night trips together. If you were to hike out to George Lake, you're pretty much going to have the entire lake to yourself. Great views in the Sierra. Elevation profile might look like this, ranging from roughly speaking about 1,000, 1,500 feet up and down. And you can get out there round trip less than 10 miles. So that might be one sampling of a place you might want to explore. Dinky Lakes Wilderness, also beginner friendly. You're going to access it out of either Shaver Lake or Corright Reservoir. Elevation ranges from 8,000 to 10,000 feet. There are a ton of small lakes dotted within Dinky Lakes Wilderness. In fact, this is the view from the highest point in Dinky Lakes Wilderness called Three Sisters. And you can see there's a handful of lakes here. So if you just want to have your own private, secluded backpacking lake vacation, you could pick one of these lakes. If someone's there, go to the next one or go to the next one. In fact, you could string a whole backpacking experience together. We can actually go and hit 10 different lakes in one 30-mile loop. And the elevation profile might look like this. Within 8 to 10,000 feet of elevation gain, having a multi-night backpacking trip out there. That's kind of your beginner-friendly wilderness. Again, you could kind of bail, get back to home, get back to help if you needed to pretty quickly. Now, the next level of wilderness, I call this John Muir Trail friendly wilderness. You're a little bit more deeper into the Sierra. It's kind of one day to access the John Muir Trail. You can access some of the more remote sections of the JMT. There are some optional on and off side trips you can do to kind of explore. I would say it's kind of this area here between your John Muir Wilderness and Ansel Adams Wilderness along the JMT. You're going to use Florence and Edison Lake as kind of your main put-in points to access this. This is deep into the Sierra. The travel time from Fresno Clovis area back to Edison Florence Lake is about 3 hours. And so it's only 90 miles, but it's going to take you some time winding back down some quasi-paved, quasi-dirt, one-lane roads. as you're getting back there. There's a ferry ride back on these lakes that will take you across the lake to your starting trailhead, and then you'll just be a handful of miles away from the GMT. This is what that might look like from a different perspective. So here's a distance at Florence Lake, and this yellow line that goes north to south here is the John Muir Trail. Let's say we picked a small spot off the GMT here. Here you have Mott Lake, which I have a picture of. It's about 50 miles round trip from Edison Lake. But Mott Lake isn't the only one, right? You pull out the map, check out the lakes. You can access a ton of lakes. Just take a few miles off the GMT and use this access point as a way to get back there. In addition, you could put together a loop. You could do a nice, 30 or 40 mile loop on the GMT, spend a few days out there. This is what I call like an Edison Florence Lake loop, where you're going to start at Edison, hit the GMT, take it about 20 or 30 miles down to the south, and come off at Florence Lake. It might look like a little bit like this. This is a shot of Lake Marie from Selden Pass, which is pretty much smack dab in the middle of the John Muir Trail. Here's the elevation profile that comes with that route as well, roughly 30 miles, give or take. So that's level 2 wilderness. And the third level wilderness, which is where I like to spend a lot of my time, is like that wilderness. And this is a little bit more remote. You're now going to be 1 or 2 days removed from the John Muir Trail in the central part of the Sierra. These are primitive or off-trail routes, usually. If you're going to be creating a loops off of them, it usually requires some elements of off-trail. And the routes that we organize kind of as TSX Challenge in this area oftentimes do have 4, 6, 8, 10 miles of off-trail travel. It's pretty exciting if you've never done that before. Not a lot of people out here. So you definitely want to be a little bit more robust in terms of like safety protocols, how to manage emergency situations, because there's less access to help out here. The main starting points for this is going to be Wishon and Court reservoirs, which is kind of this area down here towards the southern part of this map region. And you might get views like this. This is a group we had out there hiking along the LeConte Divide. Beautiful view of the Sierra crest in the background and the Gard Divide kind of in the foreground. And you might see me something like this. This is Helfricher Lake, which is located in John Muir Wilderness. Not too far from this is in Kings Canyon National Park, but just off of these routes is Tehipite Valley. If you've ever heard of Tehipite Valley before, there's a reason. It's probably one of the best kept secrets in the Sierra. It's a little bit like Yosemite, but with no people. We're the only group that accesses that area and takes people out there. It's a beautiful place to be. And then you have one of my favorite places, which is Mount Goddard. And from the top of Mount Goddard, you can see almost every major high Sierra peak. Now, the routes that get out there are a little more remote, a little bit more robust. The elevation profiles are a little bit more spiky. So the route to Mount Goddard, you're going to have roughly speaking from 8,000 feet up to 13,500 feet. Some big ups and downs, some beautiful area though to explore. Let's talk quickly about gear logistics, and then I'm going to show you a small snippet of some of my favorite places to be out there in some of the central parts of the Sierra, just off the John Muir Trail. For the trips that we organize, we make it as easy as possible for those with limited or no experience to actually access some of these more remote least traveled destinations. We take care of the permits. If you need a backpack, sleeping bag, or pad, no problem, we'll provide it for you. If you have your own gear, you're welcome to bring your own. No worries as well. We do all the food and cooking, coordinate transportation to or from these remote locations from the Central Valley, Clovis, Fresno area, on occasion the Bay Area. And we'd love to have you out there. For the gear, if you're going to be doing this on your own, or if you're thinking about how we organize this, if you're going to be bringing your own backpack, sleeping bag, or tent, you want to have a backpack with at least 60 liters capacity or greater. That will get you through a multi-night backpacking trip in the Sierra. You want to have a sleeping bag that's rated like 20 degrees Fahrenheit or better. Again, we provide those for our trips if needed. And then for footwear, most people nowadays are using trail runners. There are a lot of stream crossings out there. You're welcome to use your traditional boot as well, or whatever fits for you. But since there are so many stream crossings, it's nice to have a shoe that you can quickly wade right through, let the water come in, wade through the streams, keep hiking. You don't have to change your shoes, let the water go back out. So something with lots of mesh that's lightweight works great out there. For food, we eat pretty well. I'll probably say I eat better out on the trail than I do at home. It's very balanced. We don't do any prepackaged meals. It's all stuff we create with a lot of love and experience. We try and go light on your gear, and we probably go a little bit heavier on the food. It's just how we like to roll. Everyone on our trip will have a backpack with a bear can and 2 additional items. I'll have a snack bag and at least 1 group item like a small fuel can. Generally speaking, the pack weight fully loaded is about 35 to 40 pounds at the starting, depending on how many more bells and whistles you might put in. And the light packs get a little bit lighter kind of as we eat. For the trips that we organize, or if you're thinking about doing this for yourself, generally speaking, the starting point that we use is out of the Fresno Clovis area or out of Shaver Lake. Shaver Lake is a beautiful high Sierra mountain town about an hour outside of Fresno. And then from there, we'll use our area to go kind of back up to the north or to the east. These are pristine, remote areas, so we try and keep them pristine and remote. We will practice like leave no trace best practices. We also take a 2-way text messaging device called InReach, which we use to coordinate evacuation in the event of emergency. I will say we have gentlemen who can take Leave No Trace to the next level. They also believe in recycling and reuse. And we have this gentleman named Jan who was out there backpacking with us in the Grand Canyon. He found this perfect swimsuit out there right along the Colorado River. Brought it back, was showing us at camp. And he also believed in recycling and reuse. So he was out there with us in the Sierra. This was his backup swimsuit, as he would say. So you can take that as far as you like. I would say for our trips, we do get a range of people. For about 30% of the people, it's their first ever overnight backpacking trip. Super proud of that. We love helping people get out there that might not have the confidence or experience to do on their own. We do have people hike at their own pace. If you're a faster hiker, you take breaks at certain checkpoints along the way. If you're a slower hiker, you might just take your time and enjoy it along the trail. And we're all going to be out there enjoying it together. There's no hurry. We're either going to be at camp or on the trail, and it's all beautiful backcountry out there. So hopefully that was just a setup of whet your appetite for doing some more research or more exploration or planning and preparing your own trips out there. There are so many additional places to kind of explore along the John Muir Trail. I'm going to give you a small snapshot of the places I enjoy the most, and it might look a little bit like this. So here's Shaver Lake. We have a little cabin out there. Oftentimes we'll congregate at this area and do a pack check the night before. If we're going out to the trailhead in the morning, it might look like this. This is Horwet Reservoir, which is a beautiful reservoir up in the Central Sierra, around 8,000 feet. We might put in at this point. Our destination might be something like this, Mount Goddard, which we've talked about. It could be Deputy Valley, or it could be out in remote areas of John Muir Wilderness, an area we like to call Hell for Sure. There's a big lake out there called Hell for Sure Lake. Different destinations that I really enjoy, and you can kind of start researching these. They're on some of our routes, and some of them are off of our routes here, but Schoolmarm Lake is one of them. This is in Bench Valley. Absolutely gorgeous. You can sit out here for days and just sight cast fish, beautiful trout. Disappointment Lake, which never disappoints. The LeConte Divide, which is, again, kind of your big kids playground. Here's Mount Hutton. This is the view from the top of Red Mountain, looking across towards the east. Here's a shot of one of the lakes along Bench Valley. The Guard Divide. Here's Hell for Sure Lake. It's a great place to go for a swim. This is a unique area that we go in off-trail routes, something called the Knob. Kind of see us working off-trail through here. This is a shot of kind of Red Mountain Basin and other areas in John Muir Wilderness. These are oftentimes tough trips. Everything we do from our perspective is as a team, and we try and really encourage people to help each other out along the way, especially when you're off-trail. Here's Mount Goddard, but just below Mount Goddard is Martha Lake. Martha Lake looks like this. Beautiful views. If you're summiting Mount Goddard, it's off trail. It's rugged terrain. Martha Lake, though, is a great place to go fishing. It has amazing golden trout, if that's your thing. A great place to kind of pick them up. These large monster golden trout. There are boulder fields if you're out there off the JMT. So when you start to get to some of these more remote locations, you have to think about the risk reward liability and how you're going to manage yourself to get out there. But sometimes there's boulder fields. Sometimes there's talus and scree. This is a remote section of the Central Sierra called Ionian Basin. If you've never heard of the Ionian Basin, again, another one to kind of put on your list of places to go Google or explore. It's absolutely gorgeous, but completely off trail, just off the John Muir Trail. Shot to Goddard Canyon. This is an area we call affectionately the Wall. So as we're making our way off trail, as just these magnificent views. And then from the Wall, we can look down into Black Cat Basin. Now, a little bit more to the south of kind of this area we were talking about, a little bit closer to Kings Canyon National Park. Not many people have heard of this, but this is Crown Valley. Crown Valley has a great view of something called the Monarch Divide. Inside of Crown Valley sits this mountain that looks like this right here. So this is Tehipite Dome. It's this dome that, it's actually the largest dome in the entire Sierra. It might not look like it from this perspective, but I'm going to give you a couple other perspectives here in a second. We do a hike that's out to Tehipite Dome. It's off trail. Tehipite Dome looks like this. From this perspective, we go to the top of the dome. Here's a group that's out here near the top. It is actually the largest dome in the entire Sierra. This picture doesn't do it justice. It's 3,500 feet. There's the top of the dome now to the valley floor. And this is in Tehipite Valley. I love sharing these areas with other people. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to share them with you here at 57 Hours. Our goal at TSX is really to provide opportunities that can inspire people for a lifetime. And these trails have had an incredibly positive impact on me and my family and lots of others in our community. And I hope can have an equally positive impact on you and your friends and family. And when you're out there, either with us or on your own, hopefully they can give you that inspiration that lasts a lifetime.